Hello, I'm Sue, and I'm reading from Judges chapter 7, adapted to suit my purposes. God said to Gideon, "You have too large an army with you. I can't turn Midian over to them like this. They'll take all the credit, saying, 'I did it all myself,' and forget about me. Make a public announcement. Anyone afraid, anyone who has any qualms at all may leave Mount Gilead now and go home." 22 companies headed for home, and 10 companies were left. God said to Gideon, "There are still too many. Take them down to the stream and I'll make the final cut. When I say, 'This one goes with you,' he'll go. And when I say, 'This one doesn't go,' he won't go." So Gideon took the troops down to the stream. God said to Gideon, "Everyone who laps with his tongue, the way a dog laps, set on one side. And everyone who kneels to drink, drinking with his face to the water, set to the other side." 300 lapped with their tongues from their cupped hands. All the rest knelt to drink. God said to Gideon, "I'll use the 300 men who lapped at the stream to save you, and give Midian into your hands. All the rest may go home." After Gideon took all their provisions and trumpets, he sent all the Israelites home. He took up his position with the 300. The camp of Midian stretched out below him in the valley. When Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, he dropped to his knees before God in prayer. Then he went back to the Israelite camp and said, "Get up and get going. God has just given us the Midianite army." He divided the 300 men into 3 companies. He gave each man a trumpet and an empty jar, with a torch in the jar. He said, "Watch me and do what I do. When I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly what I do. When I and those with me blow the trumpets, you also around the camp blow your trumpets and shout for God and for Gideon." Gideon and his 100 men got to the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after the sentries had been posted. They blew trumpets all at the same time, smashing the jars they carried. All 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the jars. They held the torches in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands, ready to blow, and shouted, "A sword for God and a sword for Gideon." They were stationed all around the camp, each man at his post. The whole Midianite camp jumped to its feet. They yelled and fled. When the 300 blew the trumpets, God aimed each Midianite sword against his companion all over the camp. Sometimes not having the facts can be funny. Like the guy that thought he'd bought a one-man tent that, when it arrived, fitted very well over his head and shoulders. Or the celebration cake that had the words, "No words on the cake, please," iced in beautifully cursive writing on the top of the cake. Sometimes not having the facts can be dangerous. Natasha was 15 when she died in 2016 after a severe allergic reaction to a baguette that contained sesame. Under the law at the time, the sandwich did not require an allergy label, as it had been made on site. Information is key to accurate understanding. When reading this Bible passage, I realized that Gideon and his final 300 were approaching the Midianites with trumpets. Yeah, lots of noise. They'd need much noise to intimidate the Midianites, as well as keeping their spirits up. If you're blowing blue murder out of a trumpet, then you won't have much time to be afraid. The unexpected explosion from bursting a blown-up paper bag creates shrieks and shock. 300 trumpets suddenly sounding in the dead of night will have induced trauma from the sturdiest of warriors. The guys would do the calculations. 300 trumpets equals 300 groups of men attacking. Scary. Now, in this passage, this is where I lose the plot a bit. Something I'm actually very good at doing. I completely misunderstood because I didn't have the full facts. It's like when I was 19 and I was being taken to a ball. I'd never been to a rugby club ball before, so I asked what I should wear, and I was told something that covered my legs, and yes, I went to a ball wearing trousers. If I'd been told a long dress that covered my legs, it would have saved me a lot of embarrassment and the subsequent hangover. When I read that Gideon's men had carried trumpets and jars, my mind drifted to crystal clear jam jars. No, don't laugh, it did. No common sense discussion in my head about would glass have been used at that point to carry the flame in. Was it even made? And for your information, Britannica says that glass was made around 2500 BC, and the history of glass says it was around 3500 BC. You take your pick. There was none of this thought, was there glass? Just the thought, why on earth would Gideon's 300 soldiers carry visible lights and be seen so easily? Wouldn't they just be disadvantaging themselves as they approached? And then for Gideon to smash these torches that they had used, turning off the light at the very moment they needed the light, really seemed to be ludicrous. Then it dawns on me. The jars were probably made of clay, to be smashed as a sudden and violent floodlight of light, again being used to intimidate the Midianites and imply that there were far more men than there actually were. Was this one of the earliest forms of mass misrepresentation? That's why, to me, a loving God cannot be defined by the written word. The written word is too open to misinterpretation. God is too big for our vocabulary. We can only glimpse and attempt to describe, tell, and understand. We have no idea why God really whittled the troops down from 32,000 to 300. We need to be careful of relying too much on a literal interpretation of the language. We do not know if there's a missing or added word. We need to be aware that God and his desires for us cannot be defined by English vocabulary or German phraseology. We also need to be aware when we are ordering online and read all the product details so we have all the information, because we might just end up ordering a 3 centimetre by 4 centimetre doll's house dining table suitable for a miniature tea party instead of the impressive oak table and chairs that we had hoped for. Lord, guide us by your personal intervention to be able to see and hear what you want us to see and hear. Amen.